Hello, welcome back to the second of our Devon and Cornwall Record Society podcasts, looking at some of our volumes from the 2010s. And I'm joined today by Dr. Todd Gray, and who many of you, I'm sure, will know already. Todd is the author of many, many books on the history of Devon. And in particular, he's here to talk to us today about a long-term project editing the parish rates from Devon in the 16th and 17th centuries. And the first two volumes of this came out in the 2010s, Devon Taxpayers 1 and 2. We've since had Devon Taxpayers 3, and with more to come. So we're here today to talk to Todd about this long-term project, but perhaps to kick us off, what are parish rates and what can they tell us as historians?
Well, I think they're fascinating. And it seems an interesting thing to say, but they're a way of raising money within the parish, which seems straightforward enough. And we do have some early ones, but they're really a Puritan means of getting rid of a church ale. In the earlier period, we have these great bun fights where people drink too much and dance too much and canoodle and sing and have a very nice time.
And that's your fundraising.
Yeah. And the Puritan side of Devon really dislikes them, as elsewhere. So we find in the 1570s this pressure to get rid of them. You can't have them at night, you can only have them in the day. You can have them, but no drink is be sold. You can have them, but you can have no fun raising money. So instead, they turn to just charging people a fee for a different ways of doing that. And this is why we have local rates. We owe it to the Puritans and their hatred of what we could call it public dancing. Uh, I mean, it's like Newfoundland. They say they don't like public dancing because no, they don't like fornication because it leads to public dancing. Well,
That way around.
no, they do it the other way around than us. They, they don't like the fornication because it leads to dancing. Uh, well, the main thing, getting off target here, what we have by parish are lists of people in sums, which usually reflect wealth or status. And it's done in a different way virtually for every parish. And that's where you start to see localism really coming to the fore. And this runs all for this series through the 1500s and the early 1600s, when family historians find it difficult to find people.
So you have these lists of people living in each parish. You can make a guess at sort of how relatively wealthy they are, which is a
Yeah,
brilliant source, isn't it, for family historians and local
yeah.
historians?
And sometimes it lists the place they live. So you can identify the person with a farmhouse or a cottage. And
Oh,
then
brilliant.
you see they're paying, more than most people. Then you think, aha, so they're about here. And then if you've got another one a few years later, you might see the widow instead of the husband, or you see the son taking over. And they start to tell you things the more you look about Devon in a way, well, we don't know otherwise.
Yeah, an absolutely brilliant resource. So how did you kind of become aware of these and come to edit them? It's a big job, isn't it?
Yeah, I saw them in the 1980s first. Yeah, oh, probably 40 years ago this year.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that would be a nice thing to work on eventually. But, Devon has 479 ancient parishes. Most of them have a rate. It's a big job. And the opportunity came up a few years ago when the Record Society was a little bit behind in its volumes and we wanted to catch up. So I literally took 6 months off work to edit two volumes and start us off in them. And I think what's interesting for me is it's the first look at parish rates. Nobody's done it before. So you're opening up a topic, and everything I do is about a sense of place, and the evidence is central. And these documents are a good example of the fun of that. It's the building
Mm.
blocks of history. And,
Yeah.
what's exciting is you're looking at things and you suddenly see, oh, I'm looking at this in a way and it's telling me something nobody's realized before. And, that is great. I mean, this is one of my surprises that I was going to say, but Barnstable has a census of 1,500 or so. That's what the rate virtually is. And then another one of 1507. Well, nobody's realized they were there before. So, quite early on, 1500 is a nice age.
Mm.
It's a good document date. Suddenly you've got information on people you just don't expect to find.
Yeah. Because
You-
people think that there are no sources that early, or that, those kind of ordinary people's lives didn't get recorded. But it's amazing what you can find, isn't it?
Well, it is. And because I've been doing this for 40 years, you make a note, you're in the British Library and you see a parish rate there, da-da, you put it down so that you can come back to it. Well, it's all the more important since the British Library's catalog has been compromised.
Mm.
So you can't access that list of documents because the list doesn't exist anymore. So luckily, 30 years ago, I made a note of some of the parishes that are up there. So the volumes are important to people who aren't going to take the time to go to Cornwall or Plymouth or Barnstable or London or Oxford to see what material there is. So I've done that for them.
Yeah. And because they're very scattered, aren't they? It's not a case of just going to the Devon Heritage Centre and finding them. They're all over the place.
I mean, there are some in Somerset which have, I don't know, found their way into a family collection. I think there was a church warden who had them. They kept them. Well, it should have been with the church, but they end up in a family collection, and the daughter marries and takes the documents out of county. It's that sort of thing that, well, it's the joy of suddenly seeing, aha, here we have something nobody's looked at before.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant. And it shows, people think that so much is available, but, things are still hidden. You can still come to light. So, I mean, this might be related to some of what you said, but what have you found challenging about working on these documents?
I think trying to really understand what's going on in the parish, one of the things that completely opens up is the notion of how one parish is organized completely differently than the next one along. And I hadn't really prepared myself. We'll have the four men or the six men who are like a parish vestry, 500 years ago. Well, one parish has 8 men, another one has 6 men. You know, one parish has 3 individuals who distribute bread to the poor. Another one's divided their parishes up into quarters, and there's a warden for each one. Well, all of these places have come up with their own system because there is no national organization. Parishes aren't organized. You're not expected to do things a certain way. So you're going through the documents and you suddenly realize in Bear Ferrers, they still have a flock of sheep, which is the parish sheep. Other parishes don't do it, but they do that. And you're expected because you own, Crockenwell Farm, that you always take 10 of the sheep, and at the end of the year, the fleeces go to the parish to look after the church. Well, the next parish isn't doing that at all. What they thought, oh, there's Bear Ferris with that fancy flock of sheep. Who do they think they are? There must be things like that being said. Oh,
Mm.
old fashioned to have sheep. We don't have sheep, you know. And
You can imagine the other as well, can't you? Oh, they do this. We want one of those. We
yeah,
want a flock.
and you wonder how many of those discussions are invisible. So all the time you're faced with a new parish, a new set of organization, and the documents don't always tell you. They may hint at something, and you think, I wonder what that means.
Mm.
The parishioners who vote in one church warden, but the vicar votes in the other, decides the other. Well, that's not agreed everywhere, and there are these huge arguments from one place to another. Oh, we used to do it. No, we didn't. Well, it's the joy of history, isn't it? That you're unraveling the past. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And it's complicated, and it's written by people who they knew exactly what they meant, but we don't.
Yeah, I mean, they're not telling us for our sake, they're
Yeah.
putting it for their own. So it's just one of the joys of working on what on first impression is just a boring tax list, but it isn't. Uh,
Mm.
and one of the things I was really keen, and one reason why I was keen to do this, was I was able to write up a little history in volume 1 or maybe in volume 2, of how documents in Devon survive. The decision by Chudleigh to send their records off to Exeter because they can't look after them. Whereas Barnstable didn't look after theirs. They left chests with documents out in the open for people to do jam jars with. They used to cut the top of medieval documents and use them
No.
on top of marmalade. So I was able to say, well, this is how Record Office started, and before that, this is how people look after their documents. And we haven't had that before. So I was able to sneak that into the volume because,
Mm.
it's part of the history of these church warden accounts and the poor accounts. Because, there's so many different rates. Some of them are for the poor, some of them are the church, some of them for the hospital, some of them is for, martial law. All these various things are happening and they're raising money. And you think, wow, what a story it's telling us.
Yeah. And it's wonderful to have someone who kind of knows the documents, making that accessible and bringing that to life.
Well, I think the historian is increasingly more important because the number of archivists have been run down. So there are fewer archivists in the record offices to look after things, fewer librarians, and the historians play a more important role since austerity. We are the guardians of the past in a way where we're more standing on our own than we ever have been. And that's
Yeah. And people don't have the skills necessarily to work with early documents. The handwriting is difficult, the format is difficult. Just knowing where to find things is difficult, isn't it?
that is hard enough. But I mean, look at your period. I mean, how many can read your documents? Every time you look at them, you're opening up a world that most people can't understand. And that's one of the joys
Yeah.
of the record societies. We bring that erudition, that those skills right in show.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of the reasons I think what the Record Society does and what scholars like you do is important.
It's a
Wonderful. Okay, well, I think we'll let you off the hook there. You've told us what challenged you, you've told us what surprised you, you've told us why we should all be excited about seemingly boring tax documents. And we have, through the Record Society, we have 3 Devon Taxpayers volumes so far, with more to come in the future, and also many, many other volumes edited by Todd, and many of Todd's own publications, which you can look up if you haven't already. But thank you ever so much, and speak to you again soon.
Right. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.